Okay, this talk will be in English for several reasons that I will outline a little bit later. I think that if anyone doesn't get anything, this will be recorded, right? Will this be recorded? Okay, so this stuff will be recorded, and you will be able to go back and watch it again if you need. But I expect that you won't, because everything here is very simple. So today we will talk about how to gamify threat modeling for fun, profit, and world domination, because why else, right? So I'm a co-founder in a company called BSG. You can know it from its previous name, Berger Security. I also founded a bunch of other stuff in the industry, mostly in Ukraine. So it's OWASP Kyiv, No Name Con Conference, and we also run our own podcast that also doesn't have any name. So let's recap a bit what's threat modeling, what it is. So there is, of course, my workshop recorded and available online on OWASP Kyiv YouTube channel. And in fact, it's like the most popular video on the channel overall, if I'm not mistaken. It has over 2,500 views and a couple of comments. So one of them is very frustrated, I guess, because threat modeling using OWASP Threat Dragon is a very, very popular search in Google, and people stumble upon this video and they basically can't get a thing I'm showing or talking about in the workshop. AB here is Anatoly Berezyuk, who is the leader of OWASP Kyiv, and he is kindly advising our guests, our online guests from abroad, to learn Ukrainian, but I don't think it's a way for them to go. So this is why I decided to do this presentation in English, first of all. So what's the big problem of threat modeling? So before we dig deeper in what it is and what it is not, let me just share this paraphrased quote from Dan Ariely. That means that, everyone has a general idea of what it is, but in fact, nobody really does it for several reasons that we will discuss a little bit later. So why am I addressing this topic? I'm generally interested in AppSec, and I'm generally interested in threat modeling because I believe that it can resolve many tasks that we do not touch because of, because of the reasons we will touch later. So I am in a position where I am a broad generalist. So my expertise is wired from very different directions. I was in infrastructure. I am interested in psychology. I have an understanding of math. I'm actually formally trained as a mathematician. So I jumped into the red team, having a profound enough understanding of what general cybersecurity discipline is. And I'm trying to apply that experience here wherever I can. Also, I am focused on making my team's job easier, simpler, and less boring. And I'm generally aimed at making my team the best in the business, but how does it explain why I am talking about threat modeling? Because it's generally perceived as a blue teamer's job, right? So threat modeling is for builders, not for hackers. So why me? Because clients are coming to us and are asking very embarrassing questions. First of all, many of them think of OWASP Top 10 as a set of requirements, which it is not. So maybe in some parallel universe, it is, but in this one, it's just a marketing brochure that is showing to developers, testers, software managers, and maybe some unaware security professionals that there are some security risks in the wild, and this is the most popular and most devastating subset of 10 of them, right? A slightly more mature customer will ask whether we do pen test against some framework like OWASP, Web Security Testing Guide, or ASVS, or Mobile Security Testing Guide, or whatever, which is much more smart thing to ask, of course, but unfortunately, any testing guide is not fully comprehensive. It doesn't cover everything. And it, in fact, even doesn't try. So there are known things, and there are checklists how to check those known things. But what do you do with the black swan? They do not address that question. And the most curious customers, of course, will ask us about why don't we charge only for those vulnerabilities that we find, and not for time rates, right? For time spent on the project. But the simple question here is just because it's much cheaper for them in the end. And the open question that is popping up like in 90% of initial pre-sale dialogues with the customer is, how do you guarantee that you will find everything? And the fair question and the fair answer here is we don't. Because that's the nature of red teaming, right? You take two pentester teams, give them the same task. They are both very, very skilled and they do their job very well. And you compare the reports and they intersect in 60% of findings. That's how it works, because it's a really stochastic process, and it doesn't guarantee you the full coverage in any given scenario, but you still can try, right? And if you have a mature, reasonable customer, you can approach that problem, not the customer that is asking you whether you test for OWASP top 5 because top 10 is apparently too expensive. If you have a customer who agrees to be involved into scoping their project, you can use threat modeling as a red teamer to see how you can attack the application or the system or the organization, and then do it, right? Other ways to show coverage, of course, are different threat models that are already complete. Yeah, there is something that is already out there and it covers as much as possible, but at some points it's irrelevant and doesn't apply to your particular task, as in my threat attack, for instance. Yeah, so there is no need to use all the techniques and all the tactics to get into the organization. You only need a few of them, but there are much, much more. And in AppSec, of course, there are these great products, these great documents, the products of corresponding OWASP projects, but again, they do not cover everything by any means, and they do not apply everywhere by all their sections. So let's get back and talk about why we threat model. There is this very long and laborious definition from the threat modeling manifesto. You can read it if you like, but we don't have that much time, so let's just skip to the essence. You cannot protect against something you don't know exists, right? So the main reason we threat model, we try to approximate on a whiteboard or in a diagram, in a digital diagram, we are trying to approximate the threats that our system has. And most builders, most software engineers, testers, managers who are not involved into hacking but build stuff are permanently stuck at this peak of Mount Stupid because they just do not know how we attack their stuff, right? That's not their fault. That's just how our brain works. And no threat is visible from there. You can imagine something, you can try to brainstorm something, but unless you have a hacker in your team, you will not be even close to complete vision. So what tools they can use in order to get better, right? So there is this fancy thing, threat modeling. And when we Google threat models, we normally find this cool guy. This is Adam Shostak, who has been involved into developing the threat modeling tools for Microsoft early this century. And threat modeling, in the essence, is asking these 4 questions to yourself or to your developers round and round, and documenting the answers, right? So the first question is, what are we building? The second is, what would go wrong? And the third is, what we will do about it. And the fourth is, did we do a good job? So these 4 threat modeling questions generalize what we do. Just do not forget to document all the answers. The threats that we find on the question number 2, right? They fall in when we use Stride, which I recommend for starters. If you're a beginner, that's a good way to kick off. So the threats that we document normally fall into 1 or 2 or even 3 of these categories. So it's a really interesting question when we have a threat that is that can be both, like information leakage and denial of service at the same time, and we have to decide which one, and we can spend a lot of time to figure it out, but in fact we shouldn't, because it doesn't matter. Threat is a threat and you have to protect against it, and the category is useful but is not crucial. So there are spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information leakage, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. They are comprised into this nice mnemonic, Stride, and they can be used to map threats on a data flow diagram in your tool of choice. Here we have a screenshot from OWASP Threat Dragon. First of all, because it's a cool tool, and second of all, because it's OWASP, right? So how to threat model when you are a blue teamer and when you're a red teamer? Yeah, and why? Of course, engineers are asking these original questions: what they are building, what could go wrong, what they will do about it, and did they do a good job? And in the end, they will get some goals, some security requirements. Yeah, so we don't want a threat of man in the middle to be actual for our threat model, right? We don't want hackers to be able to intercept our users' traffic. So we need to encrypt the traffic between the browser and the web application, right? So this is a security goal. That's what they have to implement. And that's what the testers in the end will have to test. These are requirements for them to accomplish. What attackers do, they are assessing what the engineers have built, yeah, what could go wrong potentially, then how they can simulate that, and then how to check whether the job is done well. Yeah, so is there evidence? Is there a set of steps to reproduce the bug? Is there the risk categorization and the impact shown clearly, so the management is scary and starts fixing that stuff right away? So we can use that together. Engineers can use it for their advantage, and we can use it for their disadvantage. But in the end, we are securing their product too, because they get valuable input on how they can improve. It's not an easy task, and it takes a lot of time. Of course, there are manual ways to do that. You can just arm yourself with a whiteboard and marker, sit in a team of 3 to, I don't know, 25 people, and start threat modeling. You, of course, can do it with digital tools. There is a bunch of stencils for Draw.io that allows that. And of course, we already mentioned OWASP Threat Dragon, which is a tool of choice if you are just starting up and want to learn this very fast. And there are automated approaches, of course. There is Microsoft Threat Modeling tool, which is good if you're dealing with Microsoft technologies and live in late 90s, early 2000s, right? So this is quite out of date. I believe Microsoft uses some modern version of it, but freely available tool is good only if you are ready to work with its results for a long time, because it generates many threats automatically. When you draw the diagram, it automatically generates many threat lines, and then you have to filter them because there are many false positives, as in every automation tool of this sort. So I'm also mentioning here Iris Risk because I had the touch on it. It also has its strong points, its drawbacks, it's quite expensive, and there are various SaaS solutions that do that for you, but I was not satisfied with any of them, at least at a glance, right? So automation generates lots of false positives and is not cheap, or both. And manual approach requires this, hacking attacker's mindset, the hacker's mindset, which builders, which engineers do not usually have, because it's easy to say think like an attacker, but to think productively as an attacker, you actually have to be an attacker, and you are not. So it's like approaching this subject with this mantra, think like an attacker, think like a hacker, is like trying to get how the fish feels just by knowing how to swim, how to swim like a human. It's very different, and it's not a simple task. So asking developers to think like attackers is not very productive when we go through a threat modeling session. We need to have a few attackers involved in the group that does the session. So as a result, we have this big problem. Everyone talks about threat modeling, no one really does it, but everyone thinks that someone else is doing it. And that's why everyone claims that they do, in fact, do it when they don't. So what can we do with that? I always think that we have to learn from the best. And the best in this business, the best in the business of learning are our future artificial intelligence overlords, right? And what they do in order to learn, they gamify. They gamify humans, right? So first of all, they gamify us to learn how to drive. They sit us in front of driving simulators, and then ask us to recognize some elements on the roads. And in this way, they actually learn how to drive better than us, right? Also, when they are bored with what's going on in the street, they are trying to get their idea of what's going on in the backyard. And that's why they're using other neural networks, and they gamify this problem and basically manipulate us to go to other people's property and catch some pesky Pokemons, right? And the last thing that they haven't learned from us yet is how to deceive, how to lie. But I think they are doing a very good job in it. Okay, so how can we gamify threat modeling? There are a few things we can use. First of all, there is this very old but very powerful tool, Elevation of Privilege game, designed by Adam Shostak at Microsoft and the team. And it's very cool. It's very nice. It has very funny pictures, but it's not really up to date. So I assume, again, there are some variants of it that are modern and reflect the modern threat landscape, but what's available online for free is not. There is, of course, OWASP cornucopia. It's much more up to date. It's closely related to application security, of course, because it's OWASP. And there is a set of playing cards called backdoors and breaches from Black Hills Information Security, which we will discuss later. So what's the drawback of playing cards to threat model? So it looks like that. You sit at the table, it's a card game, you have cards, they resemble normal playing cards. So you just play poker or whatever. Elevation of privilege resembles bridge, I guess, the most, yeah? You just play it. Of course, it's slow. It's boring as any card game, yeah? If you play it for a long time, it's quite boring. It's too nerdish, as for me, okay? And it's basically inapplicable for the last 12 months or so because of COVID-19, right? So that's why we need something online, yeah? And there are quite a few options. So what do we use in our team in order to complete this threat modeling exercise and have a map of what we are going to do in a application security assessment? So we use OWASP Threat Dragon. If you don't have an idea what it is, you can go see Mike Goodwin's presentation on that. I link it here on YouTube. You can download it right away from the project page or compile it from the source code. It's a Node.js application. It's in browser, or you can use Electron version of it on the desktop. So you can use it to map the application into a data flow diagram and start threat modeling manually right away. But I strongly recommend you to see this demo because the user interface of Threat Dragon is not something Mike Goodwin is proud of. Mike Goodwin repeats it multiple times in the demo that, yeah, we tried to do our best, but it's up to you to decide whether we did a good job, yeah, in terms of threat modeling. So it's useful if you know how to use it. And you have to try it, I insist. So there is also this workshop that I already mentioned from what I started. It's in Ukrainian. You can just watch it through and start using Threat Dragon right away. In the end, you will get this. Yeah, so there is a diagram, there are components, there are links between them, data flows in different directions. There are trust boundaries that segregate different administration or operation or data management domains, right? And you can start applying threats manually here, right? By selecting a component. In this example, it's web application, and adding new threats at the left.
Can I ask you something?
Of course, please.
Now we see a page how we threat model. We do not see...
It's weird.
Yep. Це тільки у мене, що я бачу how we threat model і не бачу, власне...
No.
Так.
Okay, so OWASP Threat Dragon you don't see.
No, we don't see.
No, we see only the current slide of your presentation. That's
The
all.
problem is that the current slide is is the next one. Okay, what do you see now?
How we threat model.
How we threat
Nothing
model.
change.
Let's restart sharing. What do you see now?
Поки ще нічого. Здається, тобі треба вимкнути і увімкнути Zoom.
Black screen.
Okay.
Yeah, it's even the problem that was yesterday, maybe. I don't know.
Yep, the same. Looks like the same problem.
Okay, I will go out and join, and I will continue, right?
Так, якщо ти відразу в панелісти попадеш, якщо ні, то я тебе ще буду промоутити. Так. Attendance не збільшується, панелістів кількість також не збільшується. Треба трошки почекати. Так. Блін. Не встиг запромовтити, тому що він відразу підняв руку. Так. О. Коли піднімаєш руку, відразу скакаєш наверх списку. Так, ми тебе бачимо. Ми бачимо тепер уже весь твій екран, і тепер ми бачимо слайд OWASP Thread Dragon.
Okay. Thank you for tipping me out because I was talking about the dragon for a while and didn't know you don't see the slide. So this is a cute little dragon. Western Dragon is a nice tool, blah, blah, blah. And there is official page, the source code you can use to build it up. If you don't trust Mike Goodwin and the awesome Mike Goodwin's talk on one of the OWASP events about how to use the tool. So in the end, you get this. This is the data flow diagram that I was talking about. Yeah, so these are components, links between them. The red components and red links have unmitigated threads. You can select it. Like here, we have selected web application. You can add new threads and then you can document them and so on. So this is the general threat modeling exercise that you can do manually without any gamification. And that's what we are trying to get rid of. So to do that, to get rid of that boredom and slowness and lack of creativity, we use elevation of privilege online game. You can jump in on Heroku app. It's deployed and you can use it, but I'd rather recommend you don't because yeah, someone else have deployed a threat modeling tool online and maybe you don't want to use your clients or your own threat model on that page. But the good thing is you can just check it out. You can clone it from GitHub and run it locally or deploy it anywhere you want. This tool is developed by this cool guy, Osama Khalid. I tried to reach him out on several occasions, but didn't succeed. Dude, if you found this presentation, please find me. Please, I don't know, text me, call me, whatever. I have some very warm feedback and I would like to continue the development of this tool together. So how it looks like. You go on the starting page and there is this setup screen that allows you to select the number of players and name them and upload the JSON file generated by the Thread Dragon. So the Thread Dragon you can download right here and you can also use the sample model that goes with it. After you set up everything, you click proceed and you get the links. The number of links depends on how many players you have. And everyone has their personal link and you just copy and paste it to your common chat and you use it together. So the gameplay is like this. You see the threat model, yeah? You see the data flow diagram and you can update it, yeah? You can put threads on it. How does it work? You don't have to imagine threads. You don't have to brainstorm threads or invent new threads. There is a deck of cards and you play one by one after another, and you get points. So at the right, we see the list of players, the score, and the card they played. And basically, the card is played by the person who has it, but the card is scored by the person who imagined, who invented, who applied this thread to the model. And it works like this. You say, okay, I know how to apply tool of information disclosure. An attacker can collect sensitive information via the search engines, right? It's a web application thread. If something is available and indexable, Google will find it if it's linked somewhere, right? And it will just be available online long after it has disappeared from the web application, because Google searches live, Google indexes live very, very long. You have to go to Google and ask them to remove the index from their database, right? So you just apply it. You select web application, you say add thread, you document that. Blue teamers, of course, in mitigation, write down what they do in order for that not to happen. We, red teamers, write down what we do to check whether it didn't happen. How we test, yeah? And it goes for quite a long time, for a couple of hours, but it's not that boring if no one is dragging us down and forgetting to pass or to play his card or her card. So it goes round and round, and we play different cards. As I said, the pictures, the images are really funny, and they reflect the essence of what's going on in the thread very clearly, and you can change them. This is an open source project. Yeah, so denial of service. An attacker can make a server unavailable or unusable without ever authenticating. So unauthenticated remote denial of service condition, of course, it applies to web application. You see it selected in yellow, and the threat is documented. The possible threat conditions, yeah, what to check, what to test, are written down. Heavy backend queries or resource consumption attacks have to be tested against during the assessment. So it goes on round and round, and someone wins, of course. In this round, I won because I wanted it to to end as soon as possible. And in the end, you have something you can compare to your initial diagram, right? There are more red components. There are threads. If you select web application, you see all the threads that we have just generated in the game. They are all saved in the portable JSON that you can open with the thread dragon again and continue your work. You can go back and initiate the game with another team of experts if you need to cover some different area of the application. You can imagine many ways forward from here, but in the end of the game, you get this. You get the same diagram, unchanged, and more threads applied in different areas. The only drawback in the game is that you cannot select multiple elements and apply the same thread to all the links, for instance, if you want them to be HTTPS encrypted, right? It's a drawback, but it's quite a cosmetic one. It doesn't change anything. If you apply that thread at one element, you just implicitly remember to check that in every element similar to that one, and this will suffice, right? Because as the same way it is not important what category the thread finally falls into, it's similarly not important where we apply the thread. The important thing is not to miss the thread itself, yes, and to apply it at least somewhere, and not forget to test it or to mitigate it if you're a blue teamer. So what do you get in the end? In the end, as I said, you get the portable JSON you can share with your client. You can attach it to the report. You can add an instruction how to download Thread Dragon and open it and browse it and see it for themselves. You can update, create new elements, share the diagram and work together. There is a GitHub sharing component right in the Thread Dragon. Yeah, you can play from wherever you are, which is very comfortable nowadays. You can join teams of builders and hackers. So in the initial threat modeling session, you need to have some hackers and you need to have some developers from higher ranks like architects or leads who can share the general understanding of how stuff works, not a particular component, but the product overall. It's less boring, I guess, just in my subjective opinion. It's much less boring than a classic table top card game, and it's faster and it doesn't introduce any COVID-19 risks. It's still nerdish, but it's the least evil, I guess, here. What you have to remember when you do threat modeling in general, and you do it in this particular way, there is no such thing as perfect model. Well, maybe there is, but not in science or tech or application security, right? Because in statistics, in math, and everywhere else, models are just approximations. They all are wrong to some extent. They do not completely resemble what you are trying to achieve, right? They do not represent an equivalent of a problem. They approximate that problem and allow you to solve it in approximation. And the chances are that if you do everything right, this solution to an approximation will apply to the problem as well. And this is why models are useful. Okay. What next? I have this QR code here. You can scan it right away or just type in this bit.ly shortened link, which is not that short, really.
Yeah. QR code, there's no problem.
Okay, do you see, is it what you expected?
No, we still see OWASP Red Dragon.
Okay. What slide do you see?
OWASP Red Dragon with blue background.
This one. Okay.
You could check it on YouTube, really.
Yes, I can, but it's really embarrassing because I'm like 5 slides below.
But it looks like you told about Red Dragon, so we haven't noticed that there's something different.
No, I cannot tell you every time I switch to the next slide, right? Okay, what do you see now?
Your presentation, PowerPoint with it.
Okay, so it works now.
Yeah.
So this is Red Dragon. This is what you get in the end. Yeah, that's what I described right now. This is that no perfect models exist, for a rare exception of Cara Delevingne. And there is this quote from George Box, a famous statistician who insists that all models are wrong, but you can use some of them. Do you see the QR code?
Yes.
Okay, so I intend to do a workshop on this if you want to play, and there is enough people to do it. Let's register. There is a Google form. You can leave your contact, and when there is enough people, we will just invite everyone and play online using this elevation of privilege card game. So you will see it for yourself and you will learn from it, and we will share the sample model. You will be able to do it at work and teach everyone how to do it themselves. And of course, you can share the recording of this presentation, despite its being interrupted on several occasions. Okay, what to expect next? On March the 4th, do you see the board game on the slide?
Yes.
I will check. So, Black Hill Information Security. If you don't know what this stuff is, what BHIS is, you're definitely not a red teamer, right? So these are a bunch of very cool guys and girls who do red teaming at a top level, right? So they teach at Sense courses, they do their own stuff, and they have invented this very cool game. You can order a deck, of course, to play offline, but soon we are expecting an online version of it. Okay, so maybe in a couple of days, everything that I've just described will become irrelevant because these dudes created something paramount. Okay, so what I want you to do if you really liked this material and want to advance in this area. So of course, try out OWASP Dragon. Do you see references and recommendations?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. So there is this tool, start from it. There is this another tool, Elevation of Privilege online game. You can try it on Heroku, or you can run it yourself offline or online, wherever. And you can try out, of course, see for yourself what Elevation of Privilege board game is. It's available to download for free. And you can also order a deck of cards on Amazon, I guess. Yeah. There is a OWASP cornucopia, of course. Please try it out. It's free, it's online, and yeah, it's also moving into online direction, and let's see how it works out. And of course, read about backdoors and breaches by Black Hills Information Security. Also, there is this link to my workshop in Ukrainian. You can see, you can watch it and yeah, fill the gap about how to threat model if you need it. And there is, of course, threat modeling book by Adam Shostak. If you plan to threat model at work, there is no way you don't read it and do it effectively. There is threat modeling manifesto. It's just a bunch of cool security professionals trying to make this concept more popular and resolve the big problem of no one actually doing it. Dan Ariely, I have mentioned, he has his own website and he's a great psychologist, and you should read all his books. And there is, of course, the Dunning-Kruger effect that I have mentioned in one of the slides. You can find me at my company website. You can just email me, sapran@bsg.tech. You can read my blog and find links to my social networks at my website, and you can listen to my podcast if you have a lot of time to kill. Okay, do we have any questions? Do we have time for questions?
Of course.
Do we have any questions?
Yep, I have a question.
Please.
Have you mentioned that
Я
we
думаю,
taught-
що ми можемо перейти на українську, тому що вже ж не буде в записі, да? Q&A, Діма?
Have we mentioned that we totally rewrite all cards from this game? Have you mentioned?
No, did we?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, my bad, my fault. As I said several times, Elevation of Privilege is very cool, but it's not up to date. So in order to use it effectively, we needed to rewrite the cards. So we have our own deck of cards, which we intend to use because we just rewritten it, right? In our future threat modeling sessions. Anatoly and Sergey here have worked extensively on the threats, and Anna have done a lot of graphics work. Yeah. So in the end, we have a really cool deck, and I think we will play it at the workshop, right? Or we will hold it back to ourselves. We will play it at the workshop. Yep. So again, the workshop QR code is here. If you're interested in playing with us, please register. Thank you for reminding me about this contribution, because it was really fast. They have started on Monday. I've asked them to do it until this presentation, and they were ready to present the results, like, I don't know, on Thursday, right?
Окей. Чому я, власне, про це сказав? Тому що ти на скріншотах показуєш наші круті карти, а люди почнуть грати, а там C-Sharp.
Yeah, fair enough. C#, .NET, direct references over trust boundary, and all that ancient stuff.
So,
yeah, we don't have them.
And
we don't have that ancient stuff in our deck.
We have two questions in English, so I think I will read it in English, and maybe we will leave it for as a recording with this presentation. Okay, the first one, what kind of input data should be provided to get as much accurate as possible data about possible threats?
Data flow diagram. So everything you need is data flow diagram and someone to ask your stupid questions about how the stuff is implemented on the lower level. So data flow should be as high level as possible. Yeah, it shouldn't go down to that much of detail that will create so much burden that you will not complete the threat modeling session in any meaningful time. Yeah, you have to remain at a higher level, but you have to have someone to ask what's going on in the lower level. Yeah, you shouldn't know exactly what object storage the application uses. Yeah, but you have to have someone to ask whether they use buckets from GCP or from Amazon or from Azure, because there are different tests to be done. Yeah, and there are different threats actually, because there are different documentations and they are quite wrong in what they recommend. Yeah, and there are more chances to configure one type of bucket in the wrong way than other type of buckets. So that's what matters, but it shouldn't be in the diagram, but you should have someone to ask these questions. But overall, the diagram is enough to start. Okay, you know you can start effective threat modeling if you can describe how application works looking at the diagram. If you can narrate, if you can tell a story about how things work, but user comes here, he authenticates or she authenticates, the requests go here, they are queued here, they are processed there, they are stored here, and the log goes down there, and whatever else. Yeah, if you can tell that in full, on a very high level, that's okay to start the threat modeling, and it will be successful, most probably. I hope it answers your question.
Yep, it was a nice answer for the first part of question. And the second one, could you please give some ranking of threat modeling depends on project complexity?
As everything in this universe, if the project is more complex, if there is more entropy, there will be more work threat modeling. Just because there will be naturally more threats, right? The more complex system is, the more it is insecure, the more threats it introduces, right? The more there are moving parts, the more moving parts there are, the more ways to attack the system there are. Yeah, so the more complex the system, the more wide and broad and various are the threats in the model. But it shouldn't stop you. So it's better to start on a very high level with a very few moving parts, and then just decompose them and drop down into a second level threat model working with a particular component. Remembering, of course, to do a general exercise once everything comes together again. It's like in QA, right? You have module testing, then you have integration testing. So integral testing, I don't know the vocabulary, but it's very similar.
Okay. And one more question. One attendee noticed that your certificates from the wall have gone somewhere. Where are they?
They have fallen.
They have fallen.
I really didn't like them. That's my wife who insisted on them being hanging out there. But I have freed up some space, and I will buy some shelf and put some books there. I think professional credibility is better supported by the books you read, not the certificates you have.
Okay, so
you need to make a video where you burn your certificates.
No, there are enough of them already online. Boris Sverdlik is the best.
okay, one more question from YouTube, and it's quite an obvious question. I don't know why you haven't mentioned it, but the question is, can you commit your card to GitHub to be up to date?
It's not a question I can readily answer, because it's been a lot of work and there are people who have done it, not me. I'm here to present. Okay. The fact that it was my idea doesn't mean that I am free to share it publicly. So we need to discuss it internally and then come up with a decision. Naturally, it might be so just because we have based our work on a bunch of open source stuff. So it's only natural. But the drawback, the thing that holds us back is not that we don't want to share. We want to share. Yeah, you know that if you know us. We have to be completely sure that we are proud of it. Okay, and this is the problem, because as many in this industry, we are we are a bunch of perfectionists, I guess. So we will have to wait in any case, and we will discuss it internally. Maybe I will come back with an answer. Any more questions? Please.
No more questions.
Cool.
One question from my side. So how much time do you usually spend on threat modeling? So as I understand and as I know, it is an endless process and you can spend all your life for this, but
it's not the best way to spend your life. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that we have to find like a balance.
Yeah, of course.
On this stage, and how much time do? Yeah.
Normally, you spend as much time as you have. Okay, so there are two things to be addressed here. You need to know the level of preparation, yeah, the skills that your team has. If team has no skills, it will be long. It will be boring. It will be demotivating. It won't be a game. Okay. If the team has skills, as in our case, yeah, and if normally we play like this, we have our team and we have someone from the customer side, at least one or two persons, yeah. So two people representing business and architecture are enough to address most of our questions, but sometimes we have larger teams. So in this case, if the majority of people knows how to play, and the minority who doesn't know how to play can be led by example of those who know, yeah, it's very fast. So if everyone knows how to play, it's like an hour. A typical diagram can be played in an hour, right? If it's something exotic that we didn't meet before, and but we have support from the customer side who will explain to us all the specifics and exotic parts, it will take a couple of hours. Okay, if it's quite extensive, yeah, if it's really large, we have to split it. So again, every session will take a couple of hours. So you don't have to aim at it explicitly, but you don't want it to be longer than a couple of hours. Okay. Of course, we teach it too. So we have a separate class on that. Yeah. So we teach development teams, developers and testers and managers how to do it themselves, but not from attacker perspective, from defender's perspective. And if the team, yeah, if the customer got that training, yeah, got that class, or somehow learned it themselves, it's straightforward. It's again like an hour, as in the case when we do it ourselves. So it depends on the level of preparation of players, and if it's more or less normalized, yeah, towards knowing how to play, it's quite fast. And it shouldn't be longer than 2 hours, because then it's then we have this big problem again.
Okay, so I have to ask you to stop your presentation.
There is a question, I guess.
Yep, there is one more question, and I will ask you to answer like not verbals maybe, or you could do it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay, I have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Do you compare threat models created for the same project within the different years of project performing? If you do the same project for the couple of years, how those models evolve, change? Thank you for the question. We don't. In fact, there is just a bunch of, when we started? Last year. We have started last year, so there is not much time to compare. So it was not required for every project until late last year. So we will learn, and I will share it, I guess, in a year or so. But I assume that in the way we do business, it will change with the speed of changes in the application itself. Do you present, and the second question, do you present created threat models to the customer, or it is just for the internal use? As I said, maybe you missed it, we attach it to the report. So JSON goes with the report, and the report, this one I didn't mention. The report has a separate session in the beginning that outlines what we will do, and it maps to the threat model, just to show that we thought about it. Yeah, we didn't just apply a checklist or used an implicit model that we have from our experience in our heads because we are expert hackers, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we see an explicit model here and we map our activities to it. And that's how we show that we did as much as possible, and virtually no one with this amount of information can invent some other way to test this application. Yeah, or we missed something and we can improve the next time, or even this time if we are pointed at this a gap and in this direction. These are very cool questions. Thank you. Okay, I think I got used all the time we had. Yeah.
Thank you for your speech and for your answers.
Thank you.